A few weeks ago, the official outlook for early summer was already not great. Hot, stormy, some flooding, a developing El Niño in the background that forecasters were starting to take seriously. Bad enough that any normal year, that would be the headline. Now, the same forecasters who put out that outlook have updated it, and the language they are using has quietly shifted. The El Niño that was developing is now strengthening. The heat signal that was leaning hot has gotten hotter. The severe weather corridor that was supposed to fade by June is instead reloading and sliding north. And the flood risk that was already flagged as the most important zone in the country to watch this summer has just been confirmed again as exactly where the next big hits are most likely to land. Early June is not going to look like a normal early June. It is going to look like the opening punch of an unusually agitated El Niño amplified summer. And the worst part is that the threats are not happening one at a time. They are stacking on top of each other across different regions at the same time on a continent that is already running on a short fuse. It is late May. The updated outlooks are in. And today I want to walk you through exactly what early June is now expected to deliver, region by region, and why the people who do this for a living are telling you, in the clearest language they have, to be ready. Let's get into it. I know how this lands. Every month there is a new forecast, and every month somebody tells you it is going to be a bad one. So let me be precise about why this update is different, because the difference is not the tone, it is the geography. A normal summer outlook tells you one thing about one region, a hot west, a stormy plains. This update is telling you something much harder to digest. It is telling you that multiple major hazards, heat, severe storms, flash flooding, drought, and the first whispers of tropical activity are all expected to be active in different parts of the country at the same time, in waves, throughout June. The single most important phrase in this entire outlook is the overlap of hazards. That is the part forecasters keep emphasizing, and it is the part that almost nobody outside of professional meteorology hears clearly. We are not facing one big problem in June. We are facing several in different places on a calendar that does not give anybody a real break. Let me walk you through what each region is now expected to deal with, because the picture only makes sense once you see how the pieces fit together. Start with the West and the Pacific Northwest, because this is where the heat signal is now strongest and arguably most underestimated. The hottest weather compared to average this summer is now expected to focus on the west and the northwest, and that ridging pattern, where high pressure parks itself overhead and bakes everything underneath, is exactly the setup that is favored to lock in across these regions through June. The Pacific Northwest is not a place built to handle extreme heat. The infrastructure, the homes, the habits, the human bodies, none of it is conditioned for repeated triple-digit days the way the desert Southwest is. When a heat dome builds over the Northwest, the consequences hit hard and fast because the region has so little margin. And the second consequence of the same pattern is drought. The Northwest and Northern California are now expected to see drought conditions expand through the summer, which means hot, dry, primed to burn landscapes heading directly into the worst stretch of fire weather of the year. Heat and drought are not two separate problems out west. They are the same problem with two names, and June is the month they start really tightening their grip. Now slide eastward to the corridor that AccuWeather's long-range team has been flagging all season as the single most important flooding zone in the country to watch. The flood corridor from Texas through the Ohio Valley, including the Texas Hill Country, that is not me adding drama. That is the explicit guidance from the long-range outlook, and it has not changed. If anything, the recent flooding events have hardened forecaster confidence that this is where June's worst flash flood threats are most likely to focus. The Hill Country is in there for a specific and brutal reason. Its limestone terrain and thin soils make it some of the most dangerous flash flood country in the world, the kind of landscape where a calm creek can become a deadly torrent in minutes. The Ohio Valley is in there because slow-moving fronts, Gulf moisture, and storm complexes love to stall right over that geography. When the ingredients line up, and the updated outlook says they keep lining up through June, the flooding does not happen in a single afternoon. It happens in waves, with one flash flood event setting up over already soaked ground for the next one. That is exactly the multiplier that turns a wet month into a disaster. Next is the severe weather corridor, and this is where the update genuinely got worse compared to what most people probably assume. In a normal year, the classic tornado alley of the southern plains starts to quiet down by June as the worst of the spring severe weather rolls off the calendar. That is not what is expected this year. Severe weather is expected to be most active in June and July from the plains across the Midwest and into the Ohio Valley, and southern Canada is being explicitly flagged as one of the corridors to watch for tornadoes, hail, damaging winds, and large storm complexes. In plain English, the severe weather is not ending, it is shifting north. The corridor of greatest concern slides from the classic spring footprint up and east into the northern plains, the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, and into Ontario and the Canadian prairies. That migration matters because it pushes severe weather risk into communities that are statistically less prepared for it, communities with less experience sheltering from tornadoes, with less hardened infrastructure, with weaker institutional muscle memory for how to react when a warning drops. It also drags severe weather risk later in the year, deeper into the summer, when more people are outdoors, more events are scheduled, and a tornado warning at a county fair or an outdoor concert is a genuine emergency planning problem. There is a fourth piece almost nobody is talking about, and that is the early arrival of tropical moisture. Moisture from the eastern Pacific and from the Gulf is expected to start surging north earlier than usual this year, with the Southwest's monsoon possibly kicking in toward the end of June rather than later in the summer. That sounds like good news, and in some ways it is. The Southwest, the Colorado River Basin, Lake Mead, Lake Powell, all of these need water badly, and any rain that fills the reservoirs is welcome. But early tropical moisture comes with a violent cost. It is the trigger for flash flooding over drought-baked ground that cannot absorb it. It feeds debris, flows down burn scars from previous fire seasons, turning quiet hillsides into rivers of mud and rock. And it produces dry thunderstorms whose lightning strikes ignite new fires in landscapes that are tinder dry from months of heat and drought. Welcome rain and dangerous rain arrive in the same storm. That is the cruel arithmetic of an early monsoon, and June is where that arithmetic starts showing up. And underneath all of it is the engine that is driving this entire update. El Niño. The Pacific warm pool is no longer a forecast. It is a measurement. The odds of it developing this summer are now treated as a near certainty by the major forecast centers, and the odds that it strengthens into a strong, very strong, or even historic super El Niño event have climbed sharply. That matters because El Niño is the single biggest reason this June outlook keeps getting worse instead of better. It influences the jet stream, the placement of storm corridors, the distribution of rainfall, and the tropical environment all at the same time. The reason heat is hotter, severe weather is shifting, flooding is more likely in some places, and drought is worsening in others is that El Niño is reorganizing the entire atmospheric setup over North America. And the worst of its influence is not even here yet. The biggest impacts of a strengthening event tend to show up in the back half of the year, which means whatever June delivers is, in a real sense, the opening chapter, not the climax. So here is the practical action list, because a long list of regional hazards is useless unless you know what to do with it. If you live in the West or the Pacific Northwest, do not get caught flat-footed by the heat. Acclimate gradually now, before the first big dome builds. Identify your nearest cooling center on a cool day, not a hot one. Make sure any older or vulnerable people in your circle have working air conditioning and a plan, and check on them when the heat hits. And if you live in the wildland-urban interface, treat fire preparation like a checklist. Clear the defensible space around your home, know your 2 evacuation routes, and have a go bag ready before the smoke ever shows up on the horizon, not after. If you live anywhere in the Texas to Ohio Valley flood corridor, make a habit this month of checking the excessive rainfall outlook every single morning. When a slight, moderate, or high risk is posted for your area, treat that day with respect. Know your low water crossings and your flood-prone roads. Identify alternate routes around each one. And carry the single most important rule in your head every time you encounter water across a road: turn around, do not drown. No exceptions, no matter how shallow it looks. If you live in the plains, the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, or southern Canada, treat June as an active severe weather month, not a winding down one. Know where you shelter from a tornado. Make sure wireless emergency alerts are enabled on your phone and that the volume is loud enough to wake you. Have a NOAA weather radio if you can. And review your shelter plan with everyone in your household before the next system arrives, because the time to figure it out is not when sirens are going off. If you live in the Southwest, ride the line between hope and caution as the monsoon ramps up. Yes, the rain is needed. No, you cannot trust drought-baked ground or burn scars to handle it. If you live below a recent burn scar, know your evacuation route for debris flows now on a calm day. And during any thunderstorm event, watch dry lightning carefully, because the same storm that brings you water can start the next fire. And everywhere, get your alerts right. Wireless emergency alerts on, know a radio if you can swing it, and a clear understanding in your own head of the difference between a watch and a warning. Watch means be ready. Warning means it is happening. That distinction sounds basic, and it is the most life-saving piece of weather literacy most people never bother to lock in. Here is the honest summary of where we stand. It is late May. The updated outlook for June is now a multi-region, multi-hazard picture that is genuinely worse than what was on the table a few weeks ago. The West and Northwest are staring down a hotter, drier, more fire-prone start to summer. The Texas to Ohio Valley flood corridor is reconfirmed as the most important flash flood zone in the country. The severe weather belt is shifting north into the plains, the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, and southern Canada, dragging tornado risk into the heart of June and July. The Southwest's monsoon may arrive early, bringing both relief and danger in the same storms. And driving every one of these threads is an El Niño that has stopped hedging in the models and is now expected to keep strengthening through the rest of the year. This is not a single bad month. This is the opening of a season, and the opening just got tougher. So know which of those bullseyes you live in. Build the right plan for it. And do not wait for the first warning to find out whether your alerts are working, your evacuation route is clear, or your cooling center is open. June is not going to be gentle. The atmosphere has already told us so, in the clearest possible language, and the people who forecast this for a living are not hedging anymore. I will be tracking every shift in this pattern, and I will bring you the next update the moment it sharpens. Until then, stay safe, stay prepared, and never ever let your guard down.